So were there any other projects of yours that we didn't mention that we've overlooked?
Not that I can think of. I think you hit everything. I don't think I mentioned 6 O'Clock Follies.
No, you didn't. Talk about
That
that.
was actually, that's way early, and that was my real first job, and that was when it was a Warner Brothers show, and it was written by Norman Steinberg and Marv Kupfer, and Norman had just finished with Blazing Saddles. He worked with Mel Brooks, and so a lot of the guys were Mel Brooks writers, and they were hilarious. It was a huge, huge staff. It was a comedy that was based, it was situated in Vietnam. It was a comedy about a television station in Vietnam. And it was very controversial to do a comedy about Vietnam at that time. And it had Lawrence Fishburne in it. And that was actually my first show. Norman Steinberg gave me my first script. And we shot 6 of those. It was a single camera film show. And we had a lot of military, and Joe Cocker sang our theme song after the 3rd time when they finally got him. And he kept not showing up. And I was an intern with Alan Spencer, who went on to become a pretty good comedy writer as well. But the show didn't last because the night of our premiere was the night that it was during the Carter administration, and the helicopters were sent to save the hostages. So they broke in the middle of the show, and I don't think they even aired the rest of them. That was just kind of the end, the beginning of the end. So I wanted to mention that and Norman, because he did give me my first job.
That's great. What are you currently working on?
I am currently working on a pilot about a 50-year-old woman who has 2 boyfriends, which I think is a dream of mine. And there's a film that I love called Westward the Women, and it's based on it was not written by Frank Capra, but he wrote the idea. I forget who the writer is and who the director is. It was made in the late 40s, I believe, and it's about a wagon train of women coming across America to a town where there are no women. They've been sent for. So I'm really wanting to do that. And thinking a little bit more in terms of film, and that's what I'm doing right now.
That's great. You talked about your process for writing a pilot, but in general, for writing a script, what's your process?
Well, first, in terms of writing my own script or working with writers, or
let's say working with writers, like you're you're running a staff of a show, but you're going to write.
Okay, so the first thing we do generally is all get together. Well, first of all, you probably have a meeting with the network. They tell you about, what are some of the things they want to see or whatever. Then I sit down with the writers and I say, these are the things that the network wants us to do. These are, some ideas for character arcs. And we just have kind of a general conversation. Then everybody goes off for a week. Then we meet back again, and then everybody just pitches ideas. What if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? And then we just start deciding what would be good, what would be bad, what fits in with our arcs. And we kind of narrow down to, okay, these are our ideas. Then we assign them out. Who's going to write the idea? And basically, the way that I've done it, which I don't know if this is a good way or not, we bang out the outline in the room. So everybody's a part of the outline, and usually, just to show you how old school I am, I would do it at the computer. I didn't have like the assistant come in the room and all that stuff. We would just write the outline in the room, and some stuff we would put in and some stuff we wouldn't. We'd go, you'll find something here, you'll find something there. It really depends on who's writing it. If you have a younger writer, you want to send them out with more. If you have a more seasoned writer, you want them to be able to create more. So then we go from the outline, we do the outline, the writer goes off, writes the outline, we turn in the outline, we all give notes what will make it better? Let's change this, let's do this or that. And then the writer is off to do their script, which usually I give them 2 weeks to do a script. You know, as the season goes on, that time probably becomes shorter. Then the writer turns in the script. Everybody reads the script. I personally do not like to give my first notes to a room full of writers. So I call in the writer and we talk. If I feel like they've missed it, I might send them back out again. But if I feel like, okay, these are generally what the notes are going to be, and the writer has a little time to, you know, take that in, because it's not easy taking notes for everybody. Then we go into the room and we start the rewrite. And generally, we go page by page, and everybody throws in, what are your notes here, what are your notes there? We do a total rewrite as staff, and then at that point, it'll go to the table, then everybody else. You know, the network gets their shot at it. We rewrite Tuesday. We rewrite Wednesday. You know, every day we see it on its feet. We tinker with it. By Wednesday, we want to be locked. And that's pretty much how it goes.
What do you like about writing?
I like the solitude, I have to tell you. I like not having to get dressed. I have a writer's room right above in my house. I go up there, take my coffee. I love the solitude of it. I love creating. I love making people laugh. I love words, you know, how to pick the right word to get the right meaning. I love reading. And I have great admiration for other writers. I think you can always be inspired by other writers. And I like giving material to people and getting their feedback on it. It gives me a lot of, it's just enlightening, and it's another perspective. It's just interesting to hear other writers, especially if you respect them, you know, what they have to say about your work.
What's the biggest challenge you've faced in the business?
I think the biggest challenge was being a minority and a female. When I started, there were hardly any other women on staffs. I was on many staffs with all guys, which, you know, I don't mind. I can hang with the guys. I grew up with brothers. But it would be nice to have some other women around. And many times I was also the only minority on the staff. And so it's kind of funny because everybody thinks, you know, I remember one time somebody told me, they asked me some question. It's like you're the black, you know, almanac or something. It's like I would say, you know, well, I'll bring that up at the meeting with all the black people next time I go. But I can't speak for everybody, you know, I can only speak for myself. So I think those two things, in an industry where people are not always exposed to having a lot of women around or having minorities around, I think that it doesn't come into their minds sometimes that we need to, you know, spice it up a little bit. And so you kind of get forgotten a little bit, or people think you can only do a certain thing. You can only write for other African Americans. You can only write for women. And so you get kind of pigeonholed. They only want you when they need that particular thing, when really they should just look at the writing and say, this is a good writer and somebody who could bring something to this, whatever they are, you know. So I just think that people just need to be a little more open-minded. And I feel like television has gotten very segregated. And maybe cable hasn't helped that, because now it's like, well, then they can go over and be on that channel and have their little niche, and they can, you know, instead of, you know, being more broad-minded.
So talk about that. How do you think that evolution has occurred on screen in television from, you know, how do you think African Americans are represented on television differently now than they were? Like, what's your perspective?
Well, I have to say, I just think there's fewer now, to tell you the truth. I mean, when I was coming up, I never had any, you know, when they go, well, who were your role models? There were plenty of people out there. And there was, you know, there wasn't like a special night or, you know, it was just everybody was out there. And I think also there was, and I don't know because I wasn't old then. So I look at it differently, but it seemed like there were more people of different ages than there are now. When I was coming up at the Gary Marshall Company, we always had elder writers. We had like Harry Crane, who wrote for Jackie Gleason, Milt Josephsberg, Schiller and Weitzkopf, who did, you know, who worked with Desi Arnaz. I mean, these people were like in the room with us, and they had a great influence on me. I had great respect for them, and they were, you know, they were part of history, and you don't really see that anymore. I think, you know, people are just not as inclusive as they used to be in front of the camera and behind the camera. But, you know, I think those things happen in trends. It has to do with so many things, with politics and what is the flavor of the country right now and what are we going through, because that's what television is. I mean, we're reflecting all those things. So it depends on so many things.
Do you feel like there are more opportunities for women and minority writers in the business these days?
I think there are, because there's just a bigger playing field. There are so many more things that you can do, and you don't have to fit into that network structure if you don't want to. You know, if you are resourceful and resilient, you know, you can do a lot because of technology and, you know, but I think still, like in the mainstream, I do think it's still kind of stagnant there.
What advice would you give to aspiring writers and producers?
I would say, first of all, you have to be educated. Get an education. Read. Go to plays. Learn how film production works. Learn how things are made, you know. Look at old things. Live. Get out in the world. Have something to write about. If you're always stuck somewhere and if you're always thinking about the paycheck and the title, you know, your life is what gives you your material or what you see in the world. You have to be in the world and expose yourself to different things. Travel. I would say don't try to be the boss the first day. You know, realize that you have to pay your dues and work your way up, and that there is a benefit to that because you learn as you go. There's so many things that you learn in every different situation. You learn something different. So listen, don't always talk.
What's your proudest achievement?
Wow. I think that winning the Emmy was pretty. I mean, I was very honored to be on that show and to be part of a staff that was Emmy Award winning. That was a big highlight. Doing Home of the Brave was a big highlight for me because the story was personal to me and it was military, and because it was just I got to use my film knowledge, and I loved doing that single camera film show, and I loved all the military part of it and the jets and the pilots and all that stuff. It was great.
What's your biggest regret?
Killing that one guy in the pilot. And I think probably as I look back, I probably should have maybe promoted myself a little bit more. I'm not really that type of a person. I probably should have done that a little bit more. I probably should have, I never went to any industry things. They wouldn't, when I was doing Fresh Prince, They would have a meeting at NBC Productions every week, and they would say wonderful things about me, and they would want me to come, and I would never come. I would never go to, like, if they had a premiere party for one of my shows, I would never go because I would feel like I should be working. I was just really shy. I think I probably could have been more outgoing.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Well, I have a daughter who's a pretty good writer, so I hope to be writing on her show. And, you know, I hope to be still doing some writing and maybe, you know, helping some people along and doing some consulting, hopefully maybe getting a little bit into film work and just enjoying my life.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was a real pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, thank you.